Well, so now let's look at what we'll be discussing for AM Talk. We'll be looking at the subject of President John Dramani Mahama meeting EU leaders and what really they've been conferring about. But more importantly, there have been comments made by various members of Parliament on some of those approvals in Parliament. And we're being told by Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh, who is popularly called Napo, the MP for Mensha, who is saying that the deal, $300 million deal, we're being told that was approved in Parliament for rehabilitation of the Rich Hospital in Accra might have been fishy. And just on Thursday, we're told that a judgment debt of some $12 million has been awarded against Ghana, and it goes in a deal involving the Asa Jeffo Badge, and it goes to Balkans. I'll be joined by Mohammed Atik. He's a member of the PNC, but more importantly also he's an advocate and a public policy analyst, and he will be joining me shortly. We're taking a short break. When we come back, we'll be having AM Talk. Well, please get interactive. We have the social network page, Joynews on TV, and it's the page on Facebook, and we have a handle on Twitter, AM Show on TV. As you get interactive, we'll get to relay some of those messages to you in the course of the program. We have a short code 1760. As you get interactive also, know that I have to introduce my guest. Mohammed Atik is a public policy analyst, but also a member of the PNC and an advocate on a number of issues. Thanks for joining me. It's been a while.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Now let's start with the subject of President at the EU Africa Summit. And we've been told that the President had been conferring with a number of leaders who were present at the event. More importantly, just espousing what needs to be done as a continent, as a sub-region, to improve what the region is. What do you make of it?
Yeah,
His interactions.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, and let me say good morning to our cherished viewers. You know, let me, on this occasion also, congratulate our President on the occasion of being elected as the chairman of ECOWAS. I think it is in that regard that he's assumed this responsibility of wishing to extend the relationship that exists between Africa in general and the sub-region in particular, and then the European Union. And I have followed, not quite extensively, but I've fairly followed some of the interactions he's had with some of the EU leadership, and I think that they are on point. He's trying to open up as many opportunities as are available for Africa, and most especially the sub-region. I've always made the point that the relationship that ought to subsist between the sub-region specifically and EU should be in such a way that both unions, or if you like, both groupings benefit. And so the President is saying that there's a need for more support to the sub-region, there's a need for more support to Africa. I think that, and that is where this issue of EPAs would come up. If you look at our trade patterns, especially ECOWAS's trade patterns, I mean, our trade with other sub-regional members, or what we call intra-regional trade, is about 11% of total trade. The rest is trade with the EU and with America and so on and so forth. And that does not hasten everybody's. I mean, now the debate amongst international political economists is that West Africa's development policy, or you know, the only way out for West Africa is for us to move this regional integration agenda ahead. That is the only way we can you know, deal with the individual inadequacies associated with member states. For instance, we do not have adequate markers, and if you look at all the countries making up the sub-region, we produce virtually the same thing. So our economies are not complementary. They are actually competitive. We compete amongst ourselves in which country is able to export more raw materials to the EU and so on and so forth. So there is a need to hasten and to ensure that we widen our intra-regional trade. But in so doing, it doesn't mean that you would have to sacrifice your trade with your other trading partners, because I have made the point that there is a need to be able to achieve regional integration using trade. There is a need to expand our trade facilitation arrangements, and by trade facilitation arrangements, it means that we need to diversify our economies, so that, you see, you know, integration experts like Professor S.K.B. Asante would tell you that he has always made the point that the reason why the integration is failing is because we are not focusing on production. And for me, the argument I always make is that it's not just necessarily about production, but it's about diversifying your economies, so that there will be tradables for you to exchange. If Ghana is producing, say, coffee, let me say chocolate, it's producing cocoa, we can add value to it to produce chocolate, so that Nigeria doesn't have to import chocolate from the UK and elsewhere. So that makes it easier for you to work together. So the point I'm making is that it is important that the president is having these discussions, but that should not mean that, I think that all his discussions should be geared towards how do we help African economies so that we can begin to produce those things that we can trade amongst ourselves, and also to share, you know, ideas in terms of technology. People say we are now in a globalized world, which means exchange of technological ideas is important. These should be the things that should guide his interactions.
We've always, for decades, been having all this talk about how we have a huge market of over 300 million in West Africa, how crucial it is for us to trade among ourselves, and you also have reiterated that. But crucially, if we have this very vast market, and we're being told that we need, in a way, to trade ourselves, within ourselves, to make sure that the balance of trade with the external forces beyond Africa is breached. We don't have those huge deficits, etc. What actions do we need to take beyond these very face value negotiations, these very face value talks that we tend to undertake all the time?
Yes, I think that for us and for our relationship with the European Union and other trading blocks or economic groupings, to be sensible or to inure to us in the best possible manner, we ourselves would need to do our homework well. And that is why, if you are, look, even when you go to the WTO level, negotiation on behalf of Africa, we do not have any bloc that is negotiating for Africa. What we did was to go and join the G55. Now it's been expanded. It's a group of 55 making up of other less developed countries. But Africa as a unit does not have that negotiating bloc within the WTO, through which you can always have your issues of negotiation very well tabled at the WTO level. So it tells you that until you find essence in a grouping such as the ECOWAS or the African Union for that matter, it would always be difficult having meaningful and, if you like, mutually beneficial relationships with other economic unions, especially the EU. So my advice is, beyond the rhetoric of, oh, there is a need to have regional integration and all that, African leaders must walk the talk.
Do you think they have the commitment?
That is one of the challenges, you know, militating against the success of our integration, is the ill commitment that African leaders often exhibit. There are a lot of protocols they've gone to sign, yet there's no commitment to implementing those. And I can cite you a lot of examples. There was this thing we call trade liberalization, what is it? It's SLTF. You know, it's in respect of ensuring that goods, factor inputs can move from Ghana to Nigeria free without any impediments. But trust me, if you are moving from Ghana to Nigeria, the kinds of roadblocks that you would go through certainly does not engender trade. So I think that our leaders must begin to show the kinds of commitment that they have often told people they would show when it comes to honoring protocol agreements and so on and so forth. And again, like I talked about the need to diversify our economies. If your economies are the same, you produce the same...
You mean the structures of the economy?
Structures are, yeah, that's what I mean. You produce the same things, mostly raw materials, and you compete amongst yourselves.
You don't add value to them.
You don't add value to them, and they are all sent to the same markets. certainly there's no way you can be in a better position
to negotiate.
Because you are all negotiating from positions of weakness. So until we come together, realize the essence of having a unified economic grouping, that would mean that we look, and this idea of diversifying our economies, it would mean that at some point we can even have cross-border mergers and acquisitions, that you can have Nigerian businessmen coming to partner with Ghanaian businessmen to set up a very viable industry, for instance. That way, that is how you bridge
for their mutual interest.
For their mutual interest.
Because at the end of the day, what's more important is that you look at your overhead costs, your profit and loss.
That is it.
At the end of the day, you share your whatever equities you have in
profits that are accrued to you. You share it.
Now, in the issue of where lies the commitment is the subject of whether the structures within the various economies are good, not necessarily the indices. Okay, and if, let's say, as we experience in Ghana, in Nigeria, they don't have the proper structures within the civil service, etc., to make sure that they are able to expedite movement of goods and services, receive investors well from other countries, etc. There are huge bureaucracies. Those are problems that will always be there. I would want you to answer, but right now we're taking a short break. When we come back, we'll be having or continuing the discussions. In the meantime, though, please get interactive. And Mohammed, I was asking you, if the structures are poor, just like we have it in Ghana, across the sub-regional countries, then what should be done by the various governments then? It means that we need to have strong institutions and very capable institutions.
That is very true. And we need to ensure that it is, first and foremost, the most important thing is to recognize the importance of this arrangement. And secondly, is for the leaders of the various African countries, especially those in the sub-region, to recognize that, to be able to give meaning to that realization that we have to have diversified economies, certain institutional changes ought to be done. Certain institutional empowerment, or some institutional empowerment has to be done. And once that is recognized or that is realized, I think that the necessary steps ought to be taken so that the business environment becomes friendly to our friends, our brothers and sisters in other neighboring countries, so that they can comfortably come. And there is, a protocol that talks about the right to free movement of goods and persons and of right to establishment, which means that as a Nigerian, you can come and actually set up a business in Ghana. But most of the time, that really doesn't work out well because of domestic arrangements and all that. So I think that we need to begin recognizing all these things and putting in place the necessary mechanisms to create that enabling environment for our brothers and sisters from other countries to want to set up with us, and vice versa, so that Ghanaians can also go to other African countries or West African countries and begin to set up. The President also talked about the need for more investment in agric. I think it's not a bad call, but I would have expected. Look, for a very long time, agric has been the mainstay of many West African economies. But if you want to develop, industrialization becomes the key. And that is why I keep making the point about changing the structure the structures of our economies. So I would have expected that, in as much as he's talked about so many other things he expects our counterparts from the EU to come and do, I think that if we are talking about expanding more FDI from the EU, it should be in respect of helping us industrialize. Because that's what agriculture,
technological assistance.
And
more of it.
Yes, and even, more of it. And other, assistance that will ensure that we are able to industrialize and to achieve this objective of having a more diversified West African economy. If it is about agric, what I stand to reason is that, of course, it is not a bad idea to want to have more investments or foreign direct investment in agric. But my suspicion is that we will only be deepening or entrenching the existing trade relations between us and the EU. That is, you produce more of your raw materials, you bring it to us, because once you expand in agric, what it means is that you are going to increase production, there will be more produce, And if you are unable to consume what you produce, certainly you'll be forced to export. And in most cases, because of the values they often get for their produce, farmers often find it comfortable exporting what they produce to other jurisdictions. When you do that, like I said, you are entrenching the existing trade relations. That is, you produce the raw, bring it to us, we'll refine it and so on. I think that the time has come for us to begin concentrating foreign direct investments in the areas of industrialization, so that once our manufacturing sectors grow, we talk about West Africa being a huge market. All that means is that you can actually have whatever you produce bought if you add value to it. Because take all the countries in West Africa, you can, and all of us, like I talked about the trade patterns, we import a lot of our things from the EU and elsewhere, and it is most of the things we import are things that have had value addition. So if we are able to add value addition to what you produce, there is a huge market for you to go and sell. But if our investment drive is towards keeping the status quo, that is to enable us to produce more raw materials, then it becomes difficult for us to take advantage of that huge market we claim we have as West Africa. So for me, in as much as the president has had very positive engagements with some of his counterparts, I think that our focus in respect of attracting FDI should be, how do we help African economies to industrialize? That way we can take advantage of this huge market we talk about. That way we can hasten the integration process, and that way West Africa becomes a powerful trading bloc, so that we can begin this issue of EPAs where individual countries doing all kinds of things. It is because we don't have a unified trading bloc.
So everybody is looking at its interest
and so, and it doesn't help.
In the milieu of all the arguments as to what needs to be done appropriately, one, we have identified what needs to be done. We don't take the steps, or have not taken the steps. And if we have to pose the argument that we live in a competitive world, sure, and perhaps it will not be in the interest of the EU and the Asian tigers or the Southeast Asian countries, etc., for us also to form the market, the needed market. It means that there's also a hurdle that we need to cross among ourselves.
That is very true. And look, this idea of regional integration, it is to solve problems that individual countries cannot on their own resolve. And regional integration is become, in fact, is I wouldn't say the latest phenomenon, because it's been in existence for some time, but it is
the more appropriate.
Yes, on the international scale, you have countries now gravitating towards one kind of regional integration or the other. And regional integration arrangements are often meant, like I said, to solve problems individual countries on their own cannot. You take African countries, for instance. We have weak economies, weak output. You have a situation where unemployment is rising, very weak economies, production is very weak, trade is very weak, and so on and so forth. And these are problems that you need to address as a country if you must develop. And doing so would require some kind of integration. That is why, but for countries that trade with us, or that find Africa as a huge market, it is not in their interest to find you integrating and developing or changing the structures of your economy. Because once you do that, you would not need Chinese products coming into Africa, because you would have had the capacity to produce for yourselves, to trade amongst yourselves. So for those of us who find, for those of them who find Africa as a huge market, everywhere you go now, Africa is the new market. Everybody.
So there's almost like a second scramble for Africa.
In fact, contemporary, you can say that.
Because it happened after the First World War.
So. And it happened those days. It was more for political reasons.
Of course.
But now it's more like economic partitioning of Africa, or scramble for Africa.
Yes. We have the Chinese also making
Americans. You have the EU.
Now the Japanese also.
Everybody.
And then the Southeast Asian tigers also
they
trying
are all
to make
finding
them.
Like Africa as a good market and all that.
Now we have to turn attention to a subject that has dominated the airways over the last 24 hours. Now, particularly following that very publication by, I believe, the New Crusading Guide, about $12 million judgment that was awarded against Ghana. And again, the issue being quickly responded to by officials of government, since that we had publications that have named sources such as the Attorney General and also the Information Minister. And it says Ghana can now take full control of the Osajifo badge though, and that's just in response to the publication about the judgment debts. And it says Ghana now in control, but to pay damages to Balkan Energy. And on some headlines it says that Ghana not down and out. And even though when they were supposed to pay the $12 million to the Balkan Energy firm, and that follows, well, the arbitration that Ghana went through as a result.
Yes, I have not followed the Balkan Energy issue very extensively, but the little I know of it is, and from discussions that are coming out as a result of this publication.
You have followed.
Yes, my understanding of this is not a judgment debt, as was published yesterday by the Crusading guy. My understanding is that it was an award subsequent to the arbitration that had gone on between Balkan Energy and then the government of Ghana. So it is not a judgment debt, it is actually an award. And of course, the award means that you would have to compensate the other party for whatever they must have done or they might have done.
It's for work done.
For work done.
Reservedly.
Exactly. And by doing so, the Osajifo badge now becomes the property of government of Ghana. If you ask me, I would say it's a fair deal, because having that, it would go a long way to help in meeting our energy requirements, our energy needs. And so, since it was not government reneging on its responsibility, for which reason some damage has been attracted or has been incurred, but it's a function of some negotiation or arbitration that went on between the parties. I think that, if you ask me, I think it's a fair deal.
Because they said the dispute related to the PPA entered into between Ghana and the Balkan Energy firm in 2007 for the refurbishment and commissioning of the 125 megawatts badge and associated facilities. And Balkan under the PF was to commission the badge within 90 working days, convert it into a combined cycle power plant by the addition of certain facilities, and upgrade the facility, etc. In addition, Balkan was supposed to do the necessary things that per the agreement. And so far, it says nothing has been lost, but it's not as if it's an out-and-out loss for Ghana. But particularly because we're having problems in energy, this also comes very handy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, if it were a situation, I would have had very serious issues with it. If it were a situation whereby government had some outstanding obligations to this entity and it reneged on those obligations, that I would have had an issue. But it's a situation whereby a company has been contracted to do some work. I think the work, I want to suspect the work was done, but maybe settlement obligations were delayed, or for some reason something happened, and the people went to demand. I don't know which people took, I mean, I don't know which party took the other to the arbitration, but whatever it is, Balkan, of course, I'm sure they felt certain obligations due them were not entirely honored. So they did not take it to court, they actually opted for arbitration. And I think for that award to have happened, I'm sure the Ghanaian party or the government of Ghana as a party was comfortable with that arrangement. And for me, insofar as Ghana is not losing out in the real sense of loss because of that arbitration, I think that, and now the Osajifo badge can now be said to be an entirely Ghanaian property with nobody having issues with government of Ghana about it. I think that it can only be said to be a fair deal.
Okay, and well, the Member of Parliament for Minsha is being reported by the Daily Searchlight as saying that he will ensure, and he's Dr. Matthew Opoku-Prempeh, by the way, that he will ensure the contract for the $306 million rehabilitation of the Ridge Hospital expansion is reviewed, and despite the rejection of his motion before, I think, Parliament rose. And the Speaker of the House well, said the project would benefit Ghanaians, and the leadership of the House in that regard has been tasked to look into the project and make a pronouncement on the subject. So it means the Speaker himself agrees. Now, it's a concern that has been raised across the media, and especially by many advocates and civil society people. I'm sure you two, you have raised it
sure,
on a radio station. I listened to you on. What's your own, again, take after having gone through and looked at what the deal really is?
I feel very sad about this particular incident, and I'm feeling sad for the reason that our institutions are failing us by the minute. You have such an important institution like Parliament. Look, all of us cannot be parliamentarians. That is why we have elections, to get people to go and represent. I do not know sometimes, and sometimes when you make these comments, people tend to think that you are being disrespectful of Parliament. But you cannot help but to get emotional about some of these things. Your responsibility is to go and look out for our interests. That is the mandate we've handed over to you, or we've handed to you. That go, all of us cannot be in Parliament. So we've elected about 275 of you to go and ensure that our best interest is served. Now you go to Parliament and a contract such as that which we now have with the rich is brought. Parliamentarians are claiming they had done due diligence, when indeed from what is coming out after that approval, everything shows that not very much due diligence was done. And yet these are people we service with our taxes. And having discovered thereafter, better late they say than never, somehow it has been discovered that after the approval, that something is gone amiss, because the entity that advised government about the propriety or otherwise of the contract is saying that the contract amount or the contract sum has been inflated, is bloated, and that if for anything at all, it should not exceed $300 million. Which means that the additional money that has been added is going to come as a loss to the country. There wouldn't be value for money in that particular transaction if indeed the amount goes beyond $300 million US. Now we are told that it's in the province of 416 or so, which means an excess of over $100 million US has been added onto the contract sum. Look, we are complaining that we are starved of resources, our revenue receipts are not adding up, and that, even though I don't believe in that argument, that because of our status, donor support is declining, which is not even an argument. But whatever it is, the general understanding is that government revenues are declining against the huge development expenditure government is expected to undertake, which means that there is the need for us to save every penny that we have. Now you have an opportunity to save 100 million or over US, and the whole Speaker of Parliament is saying that, oh, he will not admit a motion that seeks to give money, that seeks to give Ghana value for money in a contract transaction such as that which relates to the Ridge Hospital refurbishment. I find it extremely scandalizing that I do not know if indeed Parliament is representing our interests. Because it does not matter who is raising the issue. It does not matter what is involved. I would have expected that the Speaker would say that, look, we will admit your motion and we must look into it. Let's ensure that there is due diligence. That is the job, the oversight responsibility the Parliament exercises. What is it about? That when some of these things occur, you will have the power, the opportunity to do further investigations, if that is appropriate to say, to ensure that indeed government has not been shortchanged, or the Republic of Ghana has not been shortchanged in such transactions. Why do such approvals often have to come from Parliament? It is because we all have the faith that Parliament will do an excellent job, ensure that the interest of Ghanaians is served in all of these major transactions that government gets involved in. Now, somebody has discovered that there is a problem, and the person is not just guessing the problem. It is a problem that is founded on the basis of expert advice. The least Parliament could have done was to either call for a suspension of the contract pending further investigations. But to just dismiss such a motion, it means that we don't care how much money we are losing, even though we all complain that there is no money. The Minister of Finance has lamented severally.
But just as a form of correction, I remember when this very incident was being highlighted during the initial stages in the media. We had an interaction with the chairman of the Finance Committee of Parliament, James Kluchi-Avegye, and actually we also had another member of Parliament in the House at the time who was also with the minority side. And they said, well, when they are approving the agreements or the loans, they don't tend to look at the nitty-gritties as to what type of construction will be done, you know, that type of, in terms of the technicalities,
yes.
And at the end of the day, they don't do the computations as to how much will be bought in terms of the line items and all. At the end of the day, it is an agreement that has been brought forward by the ministry. And so the due diligence is supposed to be undertaken at the ministerial level before the project is come. Now we know that these are difficulties that now we're experiencing. So it means that Parliament now needs to go a step further than it usually does.
No, right? that argument that the minister, the member, is absolutely moot. It doesn't arise in the first place. When they say Parliament exercises oversight responsibility over the executive, what does that mean? It means that if the ministry actually does its due diligence, you have to make assurance double sure, as is often said, that indeed the due diligence actually gave Ghana value for money in that transaction. That is all the oversight responsibility is about. So if you are saying that because the ministry has, then what job do you do in respect of approving loans? Then it means that every loan must pass through. That's virtually what you are telling me. And by so doing, you are reducing Parliament to a rubber stamp. And that is not the essence for having a Parliament. This whole basic concept of separation of powers, checks and balance. Why do we need Parliament checking the executive? It is because there are times we believe that the executive might have either deliberately or otherwise committed certain errors. We could call them either overlooking certain things and so on and so forth, or sometimes trying to be overbearing and all that. But the legislature, you are supposed to be independent. So your job is to check the excesses of the executive. Yours is to check the petty errors that the executive might have either overlooked or deliberately committed. So if you do not do that job and you think that, oh, it is for the ministry to do, what then is your business as a parliamentarian? As a house, what job then do you do when it comes to loans?
So now we know that 306 million Ghana cedis, dollars for this very project has been approved. So what steps that will Parliament take now? They go take a relook at the issue, and if there's a difficulty, then it means Parliament will now have to revisit the subject.
Exactly, but as it stands now, I do not see that happening.
I hear they have to go to court. They have to go to, isn't it, the Supreme Court, get the mandate of the Supreme Court before they can also take a relook at the agreement, because the agreement has been signed. It's been initialed. It's been agreed by Parliament and approved.
That is true. And you see, it is for Parliament to do that due diligence and raise alarms to the executive. That, look, this is the situation that we find ourselves in. We think that there was no value for money in this transaction. What has to be done? Then probably the executive or whoever, I think that whatever it is, Parliament has to discuss it first, admit that indeed they did not do a good job. I do not think that there's anything wrong. I've heard all kinds of ludicrous arguments to the effect that, oh, once Parliament admits, it means that they are not doing their job. It is only an efficient institution that will commit mistakes and admit on hindsight that I did commit mistakes, or as an institution we committed some mistakes and we must correct them and so on. But I do not see that amounting to disgrace to Parliament. I actually see it as a mark of efficiency that is being exhibited by our Parliament, if indeed they decide to rediscuss this issue and ensure that the necessary steps are taken to save this country that huge amount of money that we are likely to lose to private pockets.
Okay, so we wish that all this...
But I do not see that happening, because the indication the Speaker is giving is that this is a moot matter. Why do we waste our time? Look, Parliament is beginning...
It's because of the rigorous processes that Parliament would have to go
Why do we pay them? You think we enjoy giving them our taxes because they have fine fees?
There are a lot of legalities according to the interactions I had.
What are the legalities?
And the legalities perhaps also would make the country liable to some level of... Because... well, whoever has to undertake that contract has been committed, and perhaps certain procurement issues might have also
been... We are not saying that take the contract away from them. I'm not suggesting that. But what I'm saying is that renegotiate it. I mean, when it comes to the approvals, why do we hire experts to advise government on transactions?
Well, in this very instance, we're told that the feasibility was undertaken by, as far as the transaction advisory issues were, by Crown agents.
Exactly, and they advised government that any contract sum that is befitting of this project should not go beyond a certain amount. Government accepts that, of course, we paid the advisors to do the job, which means that if we did not take their advice, we had wasted the money that we had spent on getting the advice of these experts. So they advise you. Why do we pay them? So that they give us expert advice. They've given us the expert advice. You say, no, we won't go by.
But we're told that they had said the contract sum was in excess of 142 million.
Yes, that's exactly, and that shouldn't be the case.
Yes.
So if you've paid an expert to do a job,
and we still went ahead.
We still went ahead. So
brought
the motivation?
The loan agreement before Parliament.
And that is the point. That's why I said I was sad.
So it means somebody needs to be liable for this.
A lot of people need to be liable, and Parliament
not
shouldn't
somebody,
be spared.
a lot of people.
A lot of people, because I mean, a lot of things go into the approval of some of these things, and it doesn't take just an individual. So I'm sure we complain about corruption, we complain about all kinds of things. That excess amount, where is it going to go? If you have a project and this is how much it is supposed to cost by experts, or according to the experts, you refuse to heed the advice of the experts, you go and inflate the contract sum. Certainly the difference between the actual and the inflated certainly is going to a private pocket. And that is why I feel sad Parliament could not help Ghana save that amount of money which is likely to go into private pockets. Yet when it is about issues of their per diem and so on, you'd see them up in arms. But that which will save this country a lot of money, we have been told that the speaker is even saying, no, it's a moot matter and so on and so forth. It's really a saddening situation.
Well, Mohammed, on the front page of the Ghanaian Times, we have war against Galamsey, 4 Chinese nabbed after fierce gun battle. I think it will be almost a year when we commence all these, is it raid or this very task force activity on perceived foreigners, and notably mainly Chinese who are involved in Ghana's
not only Chinese, now
illegal small scale,
and everybody else doing it.
We don't seem to be having a tap on this very issue. What have we been doing wrong?
It is saddening, actually, this trend of affairs, and government doesn't seem to learn from the problems that we are confronted with. We're talking about small scale mining. The reason why it has become possible for these foreigners to come and do illegal mining is because we have been unable to regularize and empower people who wish to do small-scale mining. Additionally, we have been unable to take a good look at the Minerals and Mining Act again. Look, there are two extremes in terms of categorization of the groups that do mining. You either belong to the small-scale mining sector or you belong to the large-scale mining. There is no room for medium-scale mining. And let's not kid ourselves. Large-scale mining, a lot of them, most of the time, are foreigners. Because of the capital requirements in respect of mining, it is hugely capital intensive. But successive governments have not been able to make it possible for Ghanaians whose capacity is gone beyond small-scale mining, but cannot do large-scale mining, to have some room. You could call it medium-scale mining, whereby, you see, because when you have medium-scale miners, what it means is that there is a tendency to employ more people who otherwise would be doing galamsey to join, because with medium-scale mining, what it would have meant is that you would need more manpower, you would require more people to do the job. So instead of risking your life going to do galamsey, you would have had employment with the medium-scale miners. We don't do that in this country. And going to get a job at the large-scale mining end, it's not easy. A lot of these people who do galamsey are low-skilled workers. But with medium, scale miners, the technology they use would not be as sophisticated, requiring that much expertise as medium-scale miners.
So that is why I think the advocacy from you and a number of the experts who have been speaking on the subject is about streamlining our mining law, and I believe that is being done at the draft stage. But
well, I do not know about that, and
because we've had that from the Minerals Commission over the years, and the ministry also responsible for that. It
would be a good thing.
But in the interim, how do we make sure that reservedly the sector that is supposed to be for perhaps locals is meant for locals? Because these Chinese just don't take flights and come to Ghana. They partner local people.
You see, the problem is that, and I was talking about generally governments empowerment of Ghanaians wishing to do mining. Beyond creating a room for them to do medium-scale mining, you need to empower the small-scale miners. Like I said, mining at every level is capital-intensive. These Chinese are coming, they don't just come with their tools, they come with money. So they come with capital. The local who is unable to do the small-scale mining because there's no support from anywhere finds it convenient to deal with the Chinese, who has no very sophisticated terms of trade, I would say. What the person requires is that I will do the mining for you, we share the booty, in a manner that is even favorable to the local. So what you do is you sit back, they use their manpower, they do the mining, they use their money, do the mining, and you share the booty. All you need is to just get a piece of land for them. But if we have a situation whereby the Minerals Commission, and I think that, look, this hunting of, call them galamseyers, it's just begging the question. The bigger problem is, have we been able to empower locals who are wishing to do small-scale mining? The answer is no. Access to credit is a problem. We all know how expensive it is to go and get credit. And now, the situation is also that equipment used in mining are very expensive to get. Now, to go and take a loan and do mining, if you ask the local, will tell you it's not the sensible thing to do. Because what if you mine and you don't get? It means that you are gravitating towards early suicide or early death, I should say. So government has to provide that cushioning. That indeed, if we want to get as many of our people as possible into mining, then we need to effect some structural changes, create an opportunity for people to be able to access credit. You could even have some national arrangement whereby if you are a small-scale miner and you've gone through the concession procurement process and you've had a concession and you do not have the capital to do, that national arrangement can come, intervene, help you or work with you to mine whatever you get when you are selling you the precious minerals, or is it PMMC they call it?
Yeah, the precious mineral
marketing company. Once you are selling it to them, there's a percentage that you pay to that company or that national entity that did the mining for you to defray the cost of whatever they did. That way, people would not have to go through, because it's risky doing galamsey. And once everybody realizes that there is national support for small-scale mining, nobody would want to partner with a Chinese. And it becomes unattractive for foreigners to come, because everybody else, if you come as a foreigner, the people who initially were doing the galamsey would be the first persons to go and report you because you are destroying their business. But now they are profiting from what is going on because there is not such a large national arrangement to help people wishing to do small-scale mining. So
government needs to sanitize the industry or the phenomenon just beyond the issue of the task force.
Exactly the point. And this task force is not even helping matters. In most cases, even people who are doing legal small-scale mining become victims.
Okay.
So it's not just about harassing, arresting, and going after people. Beyond that, let's take it that people are said to be doing galamsey. You go and destroy their businesses. You arrest them and all that. At the end of the day, what it means is that we are taking their employment away. And already we are complaining about rising unemployment. You take their jobs away from them, what is left for them to do? Some will take to armed robbery. Some will take to recruitment of criminals and so on and so forth, to build criminal empires. But we have an opportunity. We can do two things with one policy. That is, we can create employment, at the same time upping government's revenue. If we have that small national structure that will partner with people who wish to do small-scale mining, by helping them to mine, government will get taxes from them, because this government says that they don't pay tax.
Okay, your point
because you can't regularize them. You don't
just
know
about
who they are and all
streamlining the industry or regularizing as far as the English is concerned. And on the front page of the Daily Dispatch, let there be peace in MPP. Former chairman of the party, Mark Menu, appealing to perceived people who are infighting, so to speak. On the front page of the Daily Dispatch, said infighting can cause our defeat in 2016 MPP guru. And let's talk about the MPP. I know you're a member of the PNC, though, but you're a public politician, a public policy analyst, and whatever concerns Ghana's democracy concerns you.
Sure.
Now, are you worried about the perceived rivalry, or is it infighting, so to speak, in the run-up to the Congress we'll be having next week? and also issues of whoever is elected as a flag bearer in the latter part of the year.
Yes, I'm very much worried because, you see, when we talk about multi-party democracy, it does not mean the existence of one party. It means the existence of more than two parties, actually. So, the survival of every party is important to making sense of this multi-party democracy we seem to be running, or we have elected to run. Now, the infighting within the NPP is killing that party. Some may be profiting from the infighting. Some may be victims of the infighting and all that. But you do not want, if you have a fight ahead of you and you are commanding troops, you do not want to get to the battlefield with divided warriors. Because the tendency is that they will concentrate on the infighting to the neglect of the bigger fight, causing your defeat and so on. So my advice to the NPP is that, look, it doesn't profit to engage in this infighting, it's unnecessary. The point is, all of you have a common enemy, and I'm using the enemy metaphorically, not in the real sense of the word enemy. Or let me use more politically correct. You have a common opponent, just as we also do. You do not get victory over that opponent by destroying yourselves. It is actually in the interest of the common opponent to see you distracted, to see you divided. So what do? You are just looking for people to lead you into the fight. That is all you are asking for. Who are going to be the commanders, who are going to be the lieutenants, the generals, leading you into that fight. But before you even get your generals, you have killed yourselves. So nobody is fit to become a general. And even if you stand alone, who are you going to be the general over? And I have heard in recent times, just not long ago, I think 2 days ago, some kind of inappropriate smear campaign that is going on against some of the candidates, to the extent that all kinds of tapes are being played and all that. Look, and we don't see, politicians don't learn from history. You see, it happened to NDC, it happened to even the MPP, that you destroy yourselves in the run-up to your internal elections. When you are done, you have provided enough ammunition to your opponents. Then you come, oh, we didn't say that. You see, people said Prof was sick, it became a campaign issue. People said Nana is old, it became, look, all kinds of things. At the end of the day, you would spend every minute of your campaign time, instead of projecting your policies, trying to do damage control.
Okay.
And I don't think that is what they want to see or want to have in 2016.
That is where we have to end it. Thank you very much, Mohammed Atik. And it's always a pleasure also speaking to you, a young person who is also very much interested in issues in Ghana. And that way, for AM Talk next, we're having Rima and her team, and they will be with you on Body and Soul and looking at issues of sedentary jobs and what you need to do.